name is Avery, but I go by Soavecito, and I'm a horror content creator. Welcome to episode 41 of Whispers of Horror with my awesome guest, John, who is the creator of My Friendly Neighborhood. We also have our co host in Vaughn, who is going to be playing My Friendly Neighborhood while we do this interview. Hi, John. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Avery?
Doing good, doing good. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this live interview, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Vaughn, how are you doing today, my friend?
It's always a good day to be on the podcast with you guys. You know what I'm saying? It's
Absolutely,
always a good
absolutely.
one.
And I just want to say thank you so much for doing the gameplay, and then feel free to chime in the conversation at any point while you do this.
That's
Okay, perfect. We're just gonna get into it. So, John, tell me a little bit about My Friendly Neighborhood and what inspired you to make the game and what you drew your inspirations from.
Yeah, well, so from the get-go, the hope with doing My Friendly Neighborhood was to make a mascot horror game that had some maybe more traditional gameplay focus to it. I think there's a lot of really awesome mascot horror games out in the wild, but one that I had not seen was one that did like a proper survival horror sort of route, like say from the original Resident Evil trilogy. Well, I guess it's more of a quadrilogy if you add in Code Veronica.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Great
but
names.
so I felt like there was a little bit of an open seat for that to happen. And then at the same time, I didn't really see any mascot horror games or survival horror games for that matter going after puppets, which I thought was weird. They seemed perfect for being a gangly little enemy that can be flailing around, makes funny little quips about things. There'd be tons of potential for making designs out of the characters. So that was a little bit of like the initial, okay, could this work conceptualization?
Mm-hmm.
And then after getting into the weeds a little bit, I kind of settled on some certain unnamed influences from my from childhood TV programming that I have a personal soft spot for
Mm-hmm.
as a bit of the basis for what I really wanted to make the veneer and aesthetic out of. And to a degree, I'm not even sure that we fully hit those initial ideas. As you make a game, things evolve and change. Your ideas change. They kind of streamline into what is practical, what is better. And what we ended up getting out of it was something that kind of blended all of those ideas uh, in a way that's a little bit more nuanced um, and manageable than maybe what I had initially conceived. And so that's kind of where MFN, the game itself, ended up coming from.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. How long did it take for you to develop My Friendly Neighborhood?
Let's see. I believe it ended up being 2.5 years, if I
Okay.
remember correctly. It was approximately a year and a quarter, or about a year and a half, to the point that we released the demo,
Mm-hmm.
which was just one area of the game, and that was everything that we had developed up until that point. And then it was about another year and a quarter, year and a half, somewhere in that time range, that we ended up developing out the rest of the game and released it. So yeah, somewhere in that range. I think it was about 2.5 years.
Okay, 2.5 years. When it comes to actually, before I even ask that question, I kind of want to take a step back. What got you into game development, and when did you start, and how long have you been doing it?
Yeah. Okay. So that's actually a bit of a tough question
Sure.
to answer. So I have been making games since I was a couple years old.
Okay.
Whether this constitutes as game development or not, you can be the judge.
Sure. Sure.
So what I would do.
I'll allow it. Celebrity
Okay. Okay.
deathmatch.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
allow it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe you should hear what I was doing
Okay,
first,
fair.
and
You're
then
right.
you
You're
can
right.
decide whether it's worth allowing. Yeah. So what I would do as a kid is my dad owned laundromats, and so he would have like these large pieces of cardboard from soapboxes or machinery coming in or whatever. And so I would take the cardboard and I would scratch out a little board game to play for generally by myself when I was just a kid. And then at some point, after I realized that I could create video games with this cardboard, I would make myself like a little paper computer that like I could pretend that I was clicking on and playing video games on, that had like swappable screens and
Oh,
stuff.
that's cool.
So like screens for different things. Yeah, it was fun. And this was because I had limited screen time as a kid,
Sure.
but being a very obsessive person, the limited screen time and the amount of time that my brain was thinking about video games was very different, right? So to me, it was like, yes, I get to play games even when I'm not playing games, right? So I was doing stuff like that since I was a small kid. I didn't actually start doing game development itself, like properly, until I think I was like 14.
Sure.
And I picked up Game Maker and kind of started twiddling around, and found that I was okay enough at programming to get to the point where I could create a game. And then after that, it just kind of made sense. It clicked because it was like, oh, no, I actually can make a game. I just need to learn how to make it, and then I'm able to make it, if that kind of makes sense.
No, for sure, for sure. This is another. It kind of leads into this question too. So, like, as you are making a game and everything like that, how do you find a balance between your personal life versus finding time for the game? How's that balance been, and how do you combat like when one needs more attention than the other?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's something that I've struggled with over a long period of time. There's kind of been different segments of my life where what I was doing in terms of development meant something different to me and on a personal scale. So, like, when I started out, it was a hobby. And so that hobby was enjoyable, and I would do it in my off time when I was not doing other things like school or visiting with friends. And then at some point, it became my area of study, right? Because I was in college and I was learning about computer science. And I was kind of doing game development as a way of like getting my career, my what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of
Your
getting my knowledge set ready that I could, make a career out of it. And so that was then different. These are both things where it's like, yeah, you can't make it your full life, or it should be your full life, in the case of academia, perhaps. But then once I graduated, then I wasn't doing game development full time. I was actually a janitor.
Okay.
That has no relation to Gordon, trust me.
I
Uh,
was I, I was gonna make the reference, but yeah, you got it.
yeah, interesting parallel, right? Um,
A coincidence.
a coincidence, shall we say? Yeah. But so then it was not a hobby, but it was a side hustle that I was doing outside of my work hours. And then at some point it became a profession, And so you have this like weird change in what game development was over the years. And so how it affected my personal life and what that meant to my personal life has also changed pretty dramatically over the years. So game development used to be something where it's like, I cannot wait to get to my computer so that I can just spend as much time as I can possibly think doing game development. That was what it was like when it was like a hobby, right? But then once all this extra pressure comes on, then suddenly it's like, this is no longer something that I do to get less stress into my life. This is something that adds stress, and I need time away from it to be able to recuperate so that I can come back to it and do my job well. So it took me a lot of years to kind of realize that there was a shift, in these things, from it being like the thing that I was excited to do to it being something that I enjoy doing. I mean, I still very much enjoy doing game development, but realize that I need to balance in terms of like emotional healthiness.
Sure.
And for several years, I did not understand that, and the balance was not there. And so I would still pull what I would do when it was like a hobby or an academic an academic endeavor, 10, 12 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, depending, because like when you're enjoying something, you're totally fine doing that. At this point, though, I do not do that anymore. Um, I do work a lot, probably a lot more than is healthy too, but it is not always just on game development. And it is not necessarily so rigidly um, amassing in time. Some days I will only work 7 hours. Um, then I've got a little side hustle on the side, so I'll do an hour or two of that. Some weeks I will not work a full 6 days, not 7 days. I usually take a full day off at least.
It's important.
Now.
It's important.
It is, yeah. And honestly, there are many weeks where I feel like I've still done too much and I need to be taking more time off. And so that's something that I've been learning more and more about. And I don't really see a difference in productivity, which is interesting. Like if I take more time off, that doesn't necessarily mean that I get less done. And so with that in mind, it becomes pretty obvious that there is like, let's say, an emotional problem that I have in my heart of saying like, okay, I need to be working more or else something terrible is going to happen. I'm going to get forgotten. Nobody's going to play my games, whatever.
It's that pressure.
Well, yeah, the pressure, exactly.
I agree.
And so it's becoming more and more clear to me that my motivations for wanting to put in a lot of hours and not balance correctly with like personal life is not a healthy thing. It's not a thing that is benefiting me or my wife in any way. It needs to be balanced better, and I've gotten a lot better about it. Like just the fact that I regularly have evenings to be able to spend relaxing or working on other things. I definitely liked to be doing stuff, but nonetheless, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it right now.
Yeah, no. I if like we have similar experiences. Like for me, content creating, it definitely. I feel like if I don't produce, if I don't go live, if I don't make content, then yes, I would feel like I'm forgotten. And it's that unnecessary pressure that I put on myself that I feel like at times I get burned out and I just like start losing the love of the thing that got me into doing these things. And being able to take a second and just be like, oh, what's important? Like my health has deteriorated and I was just so focused on making content that I wasn't more cognizant of it. So like having that idea of okay, I have to be a little selfish and just focus on me, even though I am taking a break from the things that make me happy, is important. Like family and just friends and all that stuff. So I totally like. There's no easy balance because it's just like it makes you happy, you love doing it, it's your passion, but then it's just like sleep is important, eating or like touching grass, like those things are important too. I'm sure Vaughn can attest to it too. It's something that people who do their own like or creating something, it's an ongoing battle of finding that perfect balance. But kudos to you for finishing the game, and like I said, the game's amazing. Was one of the games that I was looking forward to the most because how unique it was when it came to like just puppets and horror, which something so silly and goofy and like bubbly could be actually terrifying. But we'll get more into that. You said it so. Just one more thing I want to bring up towards just this topic is you said like you found a great balance between you. What are some of the things that you like to do that has nothing to do with I guess I don't want to say gaming, but like what are some other things that you do to relieve some stress or take a break from game development that you find enjoyable?
Yeah, that's actually also a really maybe maybe you wouldn't expect it, but a very deep question for me personally.
Yeah,
I don't know.
If it's too personal, then I don't want to.
Oh no, not at all. No, I like talking about these things. Yeah, it's a tough question for me to answer. Let me give you some examples of things I do in my off time, and you can kind of see why there is still a bit of an unhealthy balance here.
Okay.
So, playing video games, obviously there is there is a problem with me doing that, which is playing video games is quite literally part of my job as a video game developer, right? So if I'm doing that in my off time, I am not actually taking time off. Yet that is something that I do
I mean,
quite
but
frequently.
in a way, I sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. In a way,
Oh yeah,
it is
no, go
kind
ahead.
of taking a break too, because I mean, unless you're playing your own things, which then I guess it's not taking a break. But like, if you're playing other things just for enjoyment, because like I'm mainly horror. When I play, like me and Vaughn, we play like this chef simulator, and I've truly just like it's a break from all that horror and just all that stuff that just feels
Mhm.
like it's ongoing and never changes. It's like a breath of fresh air. So I could say like it kind of is a break in a way.
It is so it definitely is different. I think you're
Okay.
absolutely right in saying that it's different. From the developmental perspective,
Yeah.
there is not an easy way for at least me. Maybe other people can do this better, but there's not an easy way for me to turn my
Thinking process.
analytical side off
Got it.
and just kind of like sit and enjoy something.
Okay.
You know, and to a degree, that's just who I am, fine. Yeah, there's no trouble with that. But then also to a degree, that is still in its own sense me engaging with the discipline of creating a video game, because an important part of that is doing research, development, critiquing things, coming up with ideas, solutions to problems in other games, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So I guess I agree it is different. I'm not sure I'd go as far as to say that it is a break, at least
I
for
get
me
it. I
personally.
get it.
You know,
Do you think that your mindset of like having like the analytical like breaking down from the gaming development side has do you think it could have ruined how video games are to you?
yeah, there is an element of that.
Okay.
For sure. Video games were like my favorite thing to do as a kid, to play a video game. I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case anymore.
Okay.
It is certainly something I still love doing, but it is not the thing that I'm like, wow, I can't wait until I get to go play some video games anymore. Now, is that partially because I've grown up and there are new venues in life that I get to explore because I'm older or have more monetary capability than I did when I was a child, Okay, maybe,
Yeah.
sure. But at the same time, yeah, there could be something kind of related to the fact that uh, now that I really know how the underpinnings of these things come together, and I can see flaws a lot more dramatically in things, has that kind of sullied the experience of just getting to like play a game. Yeah, I think that there's a chance that that's true,
Mhm.
and I suppose that is unavoidable. When you get too deep into something, it does become different, you know. But I guess you could also say in a different way, the enjoyment of being able to analyze something from a very experienced and critical perspective is in itself a new venue of enjoying that medium as well. So I guess as I'm chewing on it, as I'm talking about it,
Mhm.
maybe not so much ruined, but maybe changed would probably be the correct word,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah, no for sure.
Um,
So I know
but
I
anyway,
veered off the original question.
yeah, no problem at all. So like playing video games, that is something I do in my free time. I also collect video games.
Okay.
Okay, interesting. Right? And so I like going out to thrift stores. I like finding video games on the cheap. I also sell duplicate copies. That's something I find enjoyment in. That's related to business,
Hmm.
right? So, okay,
Tax
interesting.
write-offs.
Right. um, and that's pretty close to the things that I do on a regular basis. Most everything else that I do is like upkeep tasks or like necessary social engagements in
Sure.
some way. So when it comes to like going to church, okay, fine. You
Hmm.
can say that that's like a thing I do. It's not like a hobby.
I
It's
get
a
that.
social thing, or an important thing in some regard. Or spending time with my wife. That's like that's important. It's
Hmm.
a social engagement. I wouldn't classify it as
It's not a
like
hobby.
a hobby. Yeah, yeah, you know what I mean.
I hope my wife
um,
never watches this because I love you to death. You're not a hobby.
Yeah, classifying time with your family as a hobby just seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah, there's a better way to explain that than calling
Yes, very much so.
it that.
um So, but as you can see, like the main things that I would do for pleasure, like
Mhm.
playing video games or this avenue of collecting, right? Going out and finding cheap things, the thrill of the hunt, all of that. All of this is still wrapped up in video games to
Yeah.
some degree,
Oh yeah.
right? For a while I was building Legos. You can see a couple of them on my shelf over there, but that petered out in favor of video game related things, and so there's like a bit of there's a bit of an obsessiveness like that's a personal thing. I am obsessive, right? But then there's also just a bit of just disweight, like
Yeah.
clear amounts of not balancing my interests correctly. And it's something I really have been thinking about a lot, and whether it's something that I should be trying to work on, or whether that is just kind of who I am personally, and I should lean into that and be okay with that. I don't know.
I mean, I think you still have time to figure that out. I don't think there should be any like pressure to be like, is it because everything's all wrapped around video games? Is that a problem? I mean, it's a to be determined, and I think the same thing because like a lot of my hobbies revolve around gaming and or board games in this general scheme of things.
Yeah.
You just actually gave me an idea because like you talked about collecting. And I was like, how dope would it be if I got like a memorabilia or like a collector? Because I see like you have some of the characters from your game and behind you. I want to start doing every interview I do. If I could get like a collector's item from the person of the
Mm,
game, so I'm gonna try to get. That's what I'm gonna try to do. So
that's
all
a
the
super cool idea.
yeah,
Mhm.
and then so behind me, people can't see is I have like shelving. So I want to put every person that I interview to have something related to their game on my shelf as a collector's item. And so thank you for that idea. I think that's so dope. So I can't wait to do
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah,
no,
collecting is super fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, so I play Magic the Gathering. That's another thing I love to collect.
Hmm.
I totally understand when it comes to like collecting things. It's just like grabbing something that you have access to that is either hard to find or adds value to your space. It's a beautiful thing. But
Yeah, and there is, again, another element on the side of specifically video game
yeah,
collecting for specifically video game developers. These are important pieces of research
yeah,
for many reasons. Having like the actual physical disc and playing on the correct hardware does make a massive difference when you're kind of ingrained in the minutia of
sure.
graphical elements and gameplay elements. You want to use the correct controller. Like these are things that are also very abnormally important to somebody like myself.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear from like a developer's perspective on like playing games versus making games because it's two different avenues, but I feel like both of them are equally as important to creating like either content or game development. Um,
Oh yeah. Oh
my
yeah. If you as a developer stop playing games or
You
like
lose
don't
touch, right?
spend time playing, yeah, within 5-10 years you will fizzle out.
Okay.
You have to be recharging your
Yeah.
bank. You know.
It's like going to like medical school. You can't just stop like learning how to do different. There's always new
Right.
technology, new games, new ideas. Like I totally get it. It's just like if you don't keep, it's like research. You got to keep doing research because everything's always evolving. And like I said, new technology, new ventures. Like so, I totally respect it. So let me. This is the last thing, and then we're gonna get more into your game.
Sure.
When you said you're playing video games, do you only play horror or like do you play different types of genres when it comes to the games?
Yeah, actually, I might be a little bit abnormal in this. I have or maybe not. I might just be talking out of my butt. But I play a super super wide variety of things. I have a legitimate interest in like uh just about every genre. The only
Okay.
couple genres I've not really gotten into is like like hardcore sports games. That's one that I've tried a few times and I just haven't been able to quite get there. And then like here and there, like micro genres will kind of appear, uh, MMORPGs. That's
Okay.
something I've never really gotten into either.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, if you talked about really any given genre, I've likely tried to delve into it to some larger degree, with a couple exceptions. I just really love different things. Some of my favorite games are Shining Force on the Genesis, which is a strategy JRPG.
Okay.
Kirby's Epic Yarn on the Wii
The
comes to
game's
mind,
amazing.
which is yeah, just super plushy little platformer. You know, it's one of my favorites. Myst on
Oh,
the
okay.
PC, phenomenal game. You see a lot of design influence in MFN from that. Gosh, what else would come to mind that might be a little bit surprising? Oh, Sonic 2 and 3
Oh,
are
okay.
some of my favorites. A couple Genesis titles in there. You
Yeah,
might notice that's kind of
I dig it. I really do.
yeah. um yeah, or like third person shooters. Blood on PC is probably my favorite FPS. Which yeah, okay, maybe that one makes a little bit more sense for horror, right?
Yeah, a little
But
bit.
yeah, even if I was to go through the list of like what I consider like my favorite or most interesting games, a lot of them are not horror. They're from totally different genres.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right, so I want to delve a little back into the game. I love doing the segment because it's just like, yes, we could talk about games, but it's just I like to pick my guest brain just outside of kind of gaming, just to see like I want people to know like it's not all about game development. It's also about like your personal life, what you're interested in, and how it revolves around it. You know, so I think
Hmm.
it's an important thing, and it gives our viewers just a different perspective on. We're still humans at the end of the day. We all eat. We all need sleep. You know, I wanna when I created Whispers, it was more of when I see a game on Steam or just see a cover of a game, you only see the name of the person, and that does that name even mean anything to anybody? And I feel like this platform and why I created is I want to give more to that name. So I want
Mm.
people to know who John is and why, like, and then to see your personality, to see, okay, now I understand why I see certain things in this game because a lot of your personality should come out in that game. So I
That's a
just,
very interesting take and makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, and now we're episode 41, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a
All right.
lot of episodes.
Man, I don't know how, again, thanks for a lot of people who've done it, and then just shout out to my co-host Ron, who's doing a great job playing the game.
Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't been able to mock him yet, which is really sad for me.
Yeah, he's I'm impressed because I really didn't think he was gonna find the letter gun, which is I
I
guess
know,
I
and
get
he's gotten the key, and here
yeah,
he is in
yeah.
the sound stage. Very good,
I am
very
very
good.
impressed. I'm very
Yeah.
impressed. All right, so
I
let's
do
get
good
into
sometimes. All right.
it. So, puppet based horror is a unique angle. Why did you choose puppets? Like, you kind of delved into it, but like, how do you make puppets scary? And which you did fantastic, and you did what? But like, how did you get like? Okay, here's puppets. Here's horror. I'm gonna make this into a game and make it
Mhm.
work. So how run through that process for me?
Okay, so I'm going to say something that might be almost a little bit counter to the thesis of the statement there.
Sure.
I am not sure that I successfully did make puppets scary. I
Okay.
think that maybe we made puppets unsettling. Scary, we might have not made it. You know, we might have not gotten there. And I think that there's a pretty notable line between those two things.
Okay.
So scary kind of infers that deep down in your core, you kind of feel some sort of like an urge that if that thing was in the room, it would be dangerous to you in some frame of reference. Unsettling kind of infers that if it was in the room, it could be dangerous to you. You know,
Gotcha.
and there's something a little bit different about that. From my perspective, and again,
And then I'll give you
totally
mine.
understand.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, totally understand if this isn't the case for other people. You know,
Sure.
it seems to me that the puppets in the game kind of come across a little bit more like weird than they do terrifying. And that's not necessarily not by design, but it also maybe fell a tiny bit short of what was intended as well.
Okay.
Really sure. I mean, how do you, Avery, um, feel about the puppets in the game?
So I will say from the beginning, it definitely felt like seeing them. How do I explain it? When I first saw that when he was banging on the door, and I was like, oh, he's just like it gave me a sense that my guard should just be down, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt like that was what I thought you intended, like they're cute, they're bubbly, they never shut up,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, my perspective is just like, okay, my guard is down, I don't know what this game is about, and then out of nowhere he grabs me, and then from having my guard lowered is what scared me the most, and then now I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, now holy shit, like these puppets are mad, are crazy. So like I was like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I do say when you are able to tape them and they are bound and they just keep talking, that sense of horror does go away because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now they're just annoying and now I just got to hear them. But knowing
Mm-hmm.
that if you don't do that, they just come back, and then yes, they're still there, but knowing that their presence and they can come after you at any point is what also brings scare, like that sense of fear, because they could just be flopping around, but I feel like once you get into that target radius, they could start coming after you, and then sometimes you don't know, or there's multiples coming after you, and you run out of letters. So like it definitely gave that survival horror, and it was different, and that's from my perspective, and it's just like knowing that
Yeah.
a mob can come after you another sense of horror. Like even that one individual, the one that comes out of the tunnel that grabs you,
Mm-hmm.
like that, like there was different elements that made it scary for me when it came to my friendly neighborhood. I hope that's makes
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, no, no, no. See, this is exactly why like different experiences coming into a product are so interesting.
Yeah.
And maybe how biased I am almost against my own product as the
Sure.
developer. Yeah, from my perspective, it's like, oh yeah, there's these goofy little things that we just kind of put in a spooky environment. Why would anybody find it scary? Hearing you talk about it, that makes a lot of sense. I can totally see why that experience of it, of kind of like not knowing what could be coming up rather
Yeah.
than my experience of knowing exactly what's coming up, right?
Even the
Totally
title,
shapes. Sorry.
I was gonna say, even the title kind of gives you that false sense of security. I think that's what the
Mm,
whole game, if I could classify, is a false sense of security. Like it's my friendly
interesting.
neighborhood. Like okay, it's like it kind of gives you that Sesame Street like vibes of like everything is so bubbly, everybody's jumping for joy, they're singing la la la, and then second of they just lose, they just grab you, and then they're coming after you. It's just like what happened. So I
Yeah,
that's my
absolutely.
again like I and that's why I love the game so much because it's just like it gave you it's like expect the unexpected.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. I'm really thinking thinking right now how like the emotional attachment that you have as a player versus a developer very much shapes your like your overall feeling
Mm.
of the experience, which I think we all know that, but it's just interesting to kind of see that play out in how we're talking about it. It's very cool.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So when it came to like making the environment, can you touch about like how your mindset was to making like the different areas in the game?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, this was very much a product of as much me as it was Evan.
Okay.
Evan had a huge hand in bringing the environment together.
Okay.
Um, so we spent a lot of time talking about what would fit our gameplay needs, as well as kind of like giving us the environment that we felt would be evocative in some way. Um, and that is a really tough task,
Yeah.
especially in like this is our first survival horror game. It's also to a degree the first person game that either of us had made from scratch. I had only worked on just maximum action before this in terms of first person stuff. And coming into doing environment design for the first time in a new perspective is super difficult. Things that you think will work just do not work. So you really have to do a lot of trial and error. And then we also set ourselves this probably stupid goal. It was probably dumb, but we were like, we would like the environment to roughly interconnect in real space. Okay, and it does actually connect pretty closely in real space. If you put all the rooms together, they pretty much fully interconnect with each other. um yeah, so that this was a huge, let's say, problem. And I don't mean that in a, oh, this is a problem with the game, but like in the developmental sense, where it's like, okay, we have this problem and we need to figure out how to conquer it, of saying we have gameplay needs, we want this to interconnect, we also want this to be evocative of our puppety roots, so where's the middle ground between all of these things? So at some point, Evan suggested that we think about a filming studio so that we can have kind of windy rooms in between set locations. These windy rooms then do not need to necessarily fit some sort of aesthetic format, but can be a little bit more mechanical in nature. That gave us the ability to work on this underground area that you might notice or might not. I don't blame you if you don't, because this didn't really end up fully fleshing out in the design. But the sewer area kind of does act like this transportation. Like, you can get to every other area fairly quickly via going through the sewers. And the intention was to really flesh that out and bring that out in the gameplay. It really only came out in like 1 or 2 scenarios, right? Yeah. Okay, sometimes ideas don't take full form. But that was something we were really interested in starting out, was this idea of having this underground area that you could kind of like use as an alternate pathing mode of transportation between areas. So bit by bit, we just kind of conceptualized based off of these needs. And then we would put together a white box of an environment and then scrap it and then put together another and scrap it and put together another and then try to form that. And it was just this very long iterative process of trying to get individual pieces fitting together, making concessions based off of other decisions, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, quite literally, that was essentially the game design. The basic mechanics of the game are fairly simple. In fact, survival horror mechanics in general are fairly simple when you boil them down to just like the minute by minute actions that you're taking, but then figuring out how those things fit together in the actual environment is enormously complex, extremely difficult to do, because you have to consider both what is entertaining, you have to guide the player while still letting them experience and explore for their own. You have to figure out the balance between making things tense, but also not unfair. And so how does that relate to where you put save points? What are save points? Do you want them to be checkpoints? Do you want them to be limited saves? Are they safe rooms? Are they, and it's just, yeah, right. Question after question after question. And so what we ended up with was essentially a series of solutions to problems that we set in front of ourselves, if that kind of makes sense.
Okay, I think that's very interesting. So this question is kind of deep in a way. I just thought of it, and I'm gonna start asking each developer moving forward. You just, for some reason, you bring out my inspiration. So you're like my muse. You gotta come out more, for real. But
I'm glad you're liking it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm really enjoying this interview for sure. Like I said, I was really looking forward to doing this game and talking to you about it. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how I want to ask this. All right, I'm just gonna be blank. Are you happy? Is it now that the game is out and it's been out for a little bit? Are you happy with your game? And if knowing that the game is out now and has been out for a bit, if you could go back before you published it, what changes would you have made, or would you do certain things differently?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I took my time to try to ask it because I wanted to get it perfect, and I still don't think I'm gonna probably revisit it, but
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very loaded question for any developer.
Yeah.
I will say I think that My Friendly Neighborhood is a good game, but it's not the game that I envisioned. Not completely.
Interesting.
In
Okay.
terms of like what I think it could have been. And this is true for any project from any studio. Regardless of budget, regardless of talent, you envision something and it never quite realizes into what you initially thought. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes what you thought ends up being a really bad idea. And some of the things that I had in mind for My Friendly Neighborhood to begin with probably were not good ideas and needed to be changed. But there are still elements that I think about that I think didn't quite make it, that I think would have been great. Right now, the game kind of sections itself into chunks.
Sure.
That was not really initially what I was thinking. I was thinking that the environment was going to be a lot more interconnected and a lot more freeform in how you went through it. And honestly, I kind of wish that it was like that. I think that would have been really fun and engaging and given like a unique experience factor for each player that maybe the game doesn't really have as it is. It's I guess you could kind of condense that thought into saying maybe it's a bit more linear than I was hoping it would be, you know?
I get that.
I do also think that just in terms of like mechanical breadth, I think that there was a lot that I wanted to do that I realized just probably was not plausible within the limits of what I had available to me.
Okay.
That goes down to like individual weapons, how the inventory and pickups interact with the world. I mean, the initial conceit is that you would be picking up like random objects to use as temporary little weapons, and then maybe have your standard ones that you get over the game that are more permanent. That never came to be. Maybe it shouldn't have. Like maybe the game would have been worse for that. I don't know, but it is something that I wanted to do that ended up getting scrapped. Maybe more for logistical reasons than for a design reason. You know.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the characters and how the characters interact with you and what they mean, I feel like that is maybe one of the biggest missed opportunities in My Friendly Neighborhood. Now, this is 100% on me, 0% on anybody else. The voice actors and actresses did a phenomenal job. Everybody that did the modeling and the animation did fantastic work. I think I underconceptualized. You might notice there are extremely few enemy types in the game. There is like kind of really only two, and then there is like these roving obstacles. um I think that there is a ton of potential for making a lot more bespoke interesting moments where these puppets are interacting with you in bespoke interesting ways. The board game inside of the offices is maybe an example of what the game could have been overall, if that
Gotcha.
kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
um yeah, I feel like to a degree I kind of dropped the ball on that one.
Okay.
And that could have been done a lot better by somebody else, or maybe a lot better if I had more time to kind of like focus on those aspects rather than focusing on like coding and bringing the game together. I was the only programmer up until the very end for the project. So yeah, it's a complicated question. Am I happy with the game that came out? Well, sure. I think it's a fully realized product that embodies a lot of what I wanted to do with the game. I think, speaking from an objective point, I think that the design is good. Certainly not like groundbreaking, but I think it's generally fairly solid. I think the work that everybody did on the atmosphere and the visuals, they did a phenomenal job trying to bring things together within the bounds of what we had available to us. But yeah, I think that there could have been more. I think that that's kind of on me to have underbaked certain parts of the game that if I had really taken time to plan out and think about, could have been a lot better.
Gotcha. I just want to ask Vaughn. Vaughn, can I ask you a question, my friend?
Yeah, man.
When as you're playing it, wait, this is this your first time playing, or have you played it
This is my
before?
first time playing it.
Okay, well, from your perspective, what is your feelings on the game, being this your first time playing it?
Oh, it's pretty smooth. Not gonna lie. I like the character types are decent. You know what I mean? Um, I was expecting them, if I'll be honest. Maybe it's because I'm just playing on normal to chase me down from a closer distance, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. Um, but yeah, it's not overly complicated, which makes it fun. You know what I mean? I don't have to sit here and really. I'm not racking my brain. I am having to remember, start finishes and everything like that, but it's fun. You know what I mean? I'm
No,
enjoying
I think
myself.
I totally hear what you're saying behind that, which is yeah, it's solid, but it's simple, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of exactly almost what I was kind of trying to say is like I think that there is a lot of room for making it more less simple and more
Yeah,
complex that could have happened if I had designed it better, essentially.
I get that. Is Are you doing any more work on my friendly neighborhood? Are you working on other projects, or should we expect any updates on this game, or are you on to the next thing?
No, we're on to the next thing.
Okay.
No, there is a point at which you have to say, okay, we did what we could, um, and to again, not trying to undersell things. I do think the game turned out well.
Yeah.
It's a game that people really seem to enjoy. This is more talking from the perspective of somebody who like had the
Worked on the
vision of what it
game.
could
Yeah,
be. Yeah, yeah, who
I get
worked on the game itself. But if I was to ever revisit survival horror, these are things I'd be keeping in mind that I would like to change for next time. That I'd like to be a little bit more aware of for next time. And that sort of idea of doing survival horror absolutely is not off the docket.
that. Okay.
Maybe not as a traditional survival horror game,
Okay.
but I do have an idea for a project that has similar design components, I guess, that a lot of these sort of realizations of what could have gone better might be able to be helped with. That I didn't say that well, but I think you get what I'm trying to
I get the
say.
gist for sure. Speaking on just some of the projects that you may be working on in the future, are you staying in the genre of horror, or do you plan on like venturing off into something else? Like, where is your mindset when making like the games that you are potentially working on?
Yeah, so right now we're working on Secret Agent Wizard Boy,
Okay.
full name Secret Agent Wizard Boy in the International Crime Syndicate. This game is not horror in
Okay.
in and of at all, right? It's totally different. It's like a goofy take on kind of like wizard meets hitman meets goat sim is kind of the elevator pitch.
It sounds
Um,
dope.
eh,
I'll play it on when
eh,
I'm not doing horror.
yeah. uh, so, but that kind of follows a little bit more in line with some of the projects I did before My Friendly Neighborhood, which
Okay.
coincidentally were all non-horror as well. Um, I do kind of have a like of marrying things that are unsettling,
Okay.
but also aren't necessarily horrific. That My Friendly Neighborhood is an example of that. The game that I did right before that, Kyle is Famous, is
Hmm.
maybe even more of an example of that in its own kind of weird way. Um, but there's a game that I have had up in my head for a very long time that I've gone through many different like mental revisions of, and I finally feel like it's at the point where like the mental product is is good enough to start actually like figuring out how to make the game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
um
It's like getting a
and
blueprint. You have it
yeah,
like in your
yeah, I got the mental
blueprint.
blueprint.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it is a huge undertaking. Probably almost a, a it would be an undertaking that would be silly given the amount of resources I have available to me. But I kind of feel like it might be the next thing,
Okay.
after we do Wizard Boy or whatever. And if that is the case, then that is definitely going to be taking design mentality and maybe some of that unsettling ideas from survival horror,
Sure.
but putting it into something else entirely. I know that's kind of vague. I kind of don't want to.
No.
reveal too much about the thoughts yet,
I'm
but
okay
yeah.
with being vague because it's just you're leaving it up to the imagination. And honestly, I don't want
Yeah.
you to unveil anything unless you want to. When you're maybe in the future, I could get you back on and we can talk more about it and everything
Sure.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But no, I totally totally okay with that. Damn, I had a question and it just went away. This is why I love doing live podcasts because you can mess up and then who's gonna say anything about it? Like recording, you have to like
Yeah, it's
cut.
live. Nobody
It's
cares.
live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man. Oh well. Okay. So I'm gonna wait till that question comes back. But when it comes to like say I'm interested in gaming development and I just ran into
Sure.
you in the middle of the street and I just happened to know you're a game developer. What
Sure.
advice would you give me who wants to get into this field?
Yeah. I think it's pretty clear. You've got to make stuff. It's got to be bad.
Okay.
So make a bunch of bad stuff and just make a bunch of bad stuff and just keep making bad stuff. And at some point you'll still feel like the stuff is bad, but in reality it's getting better. And then at some point you'll still feel like the stuff is bad, but everybody else thinks it's good. um, there's never really a point at which you'll start making stuff and think that it's good. Nobody gets to that point. I've never talked to anybody that has gotten to that point, at least. But the more that you make stuff that is actually bad, the more you realize what is truly not good, and you start to naturally avoid that and start to figure out what people are looking for, and marry it with your own interests and your own ideas. And then at some point you find out, oh well, I guess I'm at least good enough to be able to make something that other people think are good. Maybe someday I'll be good enough to make something I think is good. It's not going to happen, but you know.
No, I get it. I get it. It's
Yeah.
honestly we're our own worst critique. Like we're like our worst critic. I'm
Hmm.
hard on myself. Like when I listened back to some of my podcasts, I'm like, man, I hate my voice. I can't. I don't know how people sit an hour and just listen to me talk and ramble, but yeah, no,
It's
it's hard when you're making content or making
it is.
games.
Yeah, any sort of content. Yeah, and you're right. Like podcast and video development is the same thing. No matter what, you're going to look back on it and say it's crappy, even if everybody else is like, yeah, that was great. What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
I wanted to ask. So, have you, other than how do I put this in words? Have you seen other people play your game, like streamers, or anything? And what is like? Have you gotten any unique feedback on something like, oh, I didn't expect it? Like you got my perspective. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Has there any? Has there been any other unique experiences or feedback that other people have given from streaming the game or playing the game?
Yeah, one that comes to mind, and I won't put this person out
No,
there because
put them
this
on
was a
blast.
comment that,
No, just
yeah,
kidding.
no.
Just
This is a
kidding.
person who told this to me personally,
Oh, okay.
not for public. They said, and this is a very well-known person. They
Okay.
said this is probably one of the best or the best indie horror game ever made, and that is weird because as you can tell from how I feel about it,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, okay, I can understand why somebody would enjoy this, but like I see the flaws in it, right? So hearing that from somebody else is like this sharp uh cognitive dissonance
Yeah.
almost, you know. Um so I just keep chewing over that. And again, like this is not just like this is a pretty well-known person.
Okay.
And if that person happens to be listening, thank you, by the way. That comment meant a lot to me. But yeah, that's, I don't know. It's weird to hear that sort of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people had very positive things to say about my friendly neighborhood, which, for my perspective, so you can understand my perspective, I made this in my bedroom, you
Yeah.
know. And so and again, there's a cognitive dissonance there because no matter what other people say about it, my own opinion is like, yeah, I could see how that could have been better, you know.
Yeah.
And that's just like how it always will be. So those are the sort of comments that I just chew on, and I'm not even sure how to approach it
Yeah.
emotionally, you know.
I
And
get that.
so I just kind of approach it analytically and just don't approach it emotionally. Yeah, I don't know. That's probably not healthy
No,
either.
honestly, we are more alike than you think, because when it comes to streaming, people are like, you helped me get through a tough time. I turn you on every chance I get, no matter what I'm doing. And it's just like, man, I don't know how to take that like emotionally, because it's just like I'm hard on myself. I'm so hard on myself, and it's just when it comes to I could have streamed longer, or I was just too much dead air, and I just didn't have the energy. And people are like, oh my god, you were fantastic, and it goes back to like being your worst critic. It's hard to get positive feedback when you could have done better, and
Yeah.
it's like I'm gonna bring this up too. It's just like there was a time where people were just being generous, monetarily, and just saying so many things, so many great things, and I struggle with taking positive feedback that I broke down. Like I literally started crying because I just didn't know how to react to that. Just because again, it's like it's an ongoing battle every day of like people are saying nice things. Maybe you should take this advice, but in the back of my head, that little voice that's saying, "No, you could do better. This was wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong." It's like we try to be perfect, but there's no such thing of it, and we still strive for it. It's like the hamster running after the cheese that you can never get. But yeah, I resonate a lot with what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head where it's like you know that you could have done better,
Yeah.
you know? And then like maybe that's the internal emotion there. Maybe that's the internal conflict is like no matter how good the product is or is not, whatever it be,
Mm-hmm.
you could have done it better. And because of that, it will never be good in your mind because it could have been good. Yeah, maybe that's because emotions are really dumb little things that say dumb little things, but they mean so much to us.
100%.
Yeah.
I will have to say like this, and this is me being like, beating, not even being opposite of what I'm using him. This is this episode is probably my top 5 favorite episode I've ever aired in my favorite
Oh,
episode.
that's
I
good to
just
hear.
like
Yeah.
I literally got. I'm not gonna lie to you. I have goosebumps. Like it was just such a unique, different approach of how I do things. I only use like 2 of these questions that I have 25 written. I didn't even get to them because it just.
Oh gosh.
I swear to God, like like I'll show you after, but
Yeah.
it just came out naturally, and like I said, I resonated a lot with what you're saying, and I appreciate you doing this interview. It was truly, like I said, top 5 of one of my favorites, and I hope to
Yeah.
have you in
Well,
future projects.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for doing the interview in the first place. It is always an honor for somebody to say, I want to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah,
So I really appreciate that.
100%. We are getting to the end of this. Is there anything that you would love to share with our audience, or anything you're working on? Any feedback or anything? The floor is basically yours for the next 2 minutes, if you want to say anything.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not a horror game, but it sure is goofy. Go check out the game that we're working on right now. It's in early access as of like a week ago. It's called Secret Agent Wizard Boy and the International Crime Syndicate. If that title doesn't get you excited, it's probably not for you.
Say that
Um,
5 times fast.
yeah, I know. It's you'll lose track of the syllables.
How did you fit all the
Uh,
characters on Steam?
yeah, actually, they don't quite. It gets cut off in a lot of the a lot of the promotional areas, but when you got a title, you gotta stick with it.
You didn't think of acronyms?
Well, the acronym is Sabatics, which kind of
Ah,
it's got a little, but I mean, we're still talking about like a 8-letter acronym or
yeah,
something
fair,
like
fair,
that.
fair.
Yeah. Anyway, though, that's kind of the main developmental focus right now is kind of getting that thing polished up and through early access. So if you have any interest in goofy, sandboxy sort of games, then that's a great one to check out, or at least I would appreciate you checking it out. But other than that, no, that's really all for me.
Perfect. So everybody, make sure you go check out My Friendly Neighborhood. Also, go check out John's new game that's in early access. The links will be in the description of the end of this and on all the platforms we are live on. I just want to say give another special thanks to John for being a guest on Whispers of Horror episode 41. It was a pleasure, and I hope to have you for future projects. And I just want to say thank you for Vaughn for being a trooper and playing and doing an amazing job. Like I said, I'm still impressed that you've gotten this far and for first time playing it, and you put out great gameplay. So I just want to say thank you to both of you guys. You guys are
Preach.
incredible human beings.
Good job, Vaughn.
Yeah.
You only
Hey.
died once. That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Hey,
For
I
sure.
somehow made it through. I was like, okay.
Vaughn, do you want to just do your plugins real quick before I end this?
Of
For
course.
people-
Everybody, my name is Vaughn. I also go by Carefree Re. Follow me everywhere at Carefree Re, Carefree Re Gaming. I am an RPG multi-game player. You might catch me playing anything. It's kind of the day. Horror, whatever. But
He doesn't play horror.
yeah, follow me on social medias.
I force him to play horror, and I appreciate him for that. But yeah, no, he's a variety streamer. Yeah, everybody go follow Carefree Reed, go follow John on X, and go check out his games. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of episode 41 of Whispers of Horror. Until next time, I don't have a